When men hear the word betrayal, they imagine something dramatic: cheating, lies, sudden abandonment. But most betrayal doesn't begin with bad intentions. It begins with self-interest. And this is where modern men get caught off guard. They are taught to expect loyalty as a default, to assume commitment guarantees protection, and to believe that good intentions are enough to secure long-term faithfulness. That belief is not strength, it is exposure. Every human being, regardless of gender, prioritizes self-interest under pressure. Emotions change, circumstances shift, incentives evolve. When a man expects unconditional loyalty, he stops watching behavior and starts trusting words. He assumes love overrides instinct. It doesn't, it only delays it. Expecting betrayal is not about being cynical, it's about being realistic. It means understanding that loyalty is conditional on alignment, emotional, practical, and psychological. When alignment fades, self-interest steps forward. Not because someone is evil, but because survival, comfort, validation, and emotional security always come first for human beings. This is where many men fail. They personalize shifts in behavior instead of recognizing patterns. A change in tone, less curiosity, more distance, increased defensiveness. These are not random. They are signals of internal recalibration. When a woman feels uncertain, bored, insecure, or presented with new emotional incentives, her behavior adjusts accordingly. Expecting loyalty without accounting for self-interest blinds a man to this process. Men who expect betrayal don't panic when dynamics change. They observe. They don't beg for reassurance. They look for consistency. They understand that loyalty is demonstrated daily through effort, respect, and alignment, not promised once and secured forever. This mindset also prevents over-attachment. When a man assumes that someone could leave if conditions change, he does not build his identity around the relationship. He doesn't outsource his confidence, direction, or emotional stability. That independence paradoxically makes him more attractive and more respected because he is not operating from fear of loss. Blind trust removes leverage, and leverage doesn't mean control, it means standards. When a man expects loyalty regardless of behavior, he tolerates boundary erosion. He explains away disrespect. He invests more as the other person invests less. That imbalance accelerates betrayal rather than preventing it. Expecting self-interest keeps a man grounded in reality. He doesn't ignore red flags because he believes in love. He understands that love is not a contract, it's a state that must be maintained. When maintenance stops, he adjusts accordingly instead of clinging to past versions of the relationship. This perspective also removes bitterness. When betrayal happens, the man who expected perfection feels destroyed. The man who expected self-interest feels informed. He doesn't collapse, he recalibrates. He exits or repositions with dignity because his emotional foundation was never dependent on another person's loyalty. Most importantly, this mindset keeps a man self-led. He continues building his life mission and purpose regardless of who is beside him. Relationships become complements, not anchors. Loyalty becomes appreciated, not required for survival. When you expect self-interest before loyalty, you stop being naive without becoming hardened. You see clearly, you invest wisely, and if betrayal ever occurs, it no longer has the power to break you, only to reveal what was already changing. The deeper a man becomes emotionally attached, the harder it is for him to see clearly. Attachment narrows perception. It shifts focus from observing behavior to protecting hope. This is why so many men miss betrayal as it forms, not because the signs weren't there, but because emotional investment distorted their ability to interpret them honestly. When attachment grows, the mind begins to filter reality. Inconsistencies are explained away. Distance is justified. Disrespect is minimized. The man doesn't consciously lie to himself. He protects the version of the relationship he wants to believe in. This is the most dangerous stage because logic takes a back seat to emotional preservation. Pattern recognition requires detachment. It requires the ability to step back and look at behavior over time instead of reacting to isolated moments. But emotional attachment pulls a man into moments. A good day overrides a bad week. A single affectionate message erases repeated coldness. Small breadcrumbs of reassurance become enough to silence intuition. This is how betrayal advances quietly. Not through one dramatic act, But through gradual shifts that go unnoticed, communication becomes shorter, curiosity fades, availability changes, boundaries soften, energy is redirected elsewhere. These patterns are clear to an observer, but invisible to the man emotionally invested in keeping things intact. Modern men are taught that attachment equals love, and love equals safety. In reality, attachment without awareness creates vulnerability. The more a man fears loss, the less he questions behavior that signals it. He avoids confrontation not because he's weak, but because he doesn't want confirmation of what he already senses. Expecting betrayal counteracts this blindness. It doesn't mean assuming the worst, it means staying alert to reality. A man who expects that people act in self-interest doesn't panic when energy shifts. He doesn't rush to secure reassurance. He watches. He listens. He notes changes without immediately trying to fix them. This mindset preserves clarity. It allows a man to assess whether effort is mutual, whether respect is consistent, and whether alignment still exists. Emotional attachment says it will go back to how it was. Awareness says something has changed. Pay attention. Another trap of attachment is over-explanation. Men begin explaining their value, their intentions, their loyalty, believing clarity will restore connection. But attraction and loyalty respond to behavior, not explanations. Over-explaining signals insecurity, and insecurity accelerates loss of respect. Attachment pushes men to chase certainty. Expecting betrayal allows them to sit in uncertainty without losing composure. When a man is not blinded by attachment, he notices timing. He notices who initiates. He notices where energy flows under stress. He notices whether problems are addressed or avoided. These observations don't require confrontation. They require stillness and self-control. This is why emotionally disciplined men are rarely surprised by betrayal. They sense disengagement early. They don't wait for proof. They trust patterns over promises. And because they are not over-attached, they are willing to adjust or walk away before damage is done. Detachment doesn't mean emotional coldness. It means emotional regulation. A man can care deeply without surrendering his ability to see. He can invest without losing his spine. He can love without becoming blind. Expecting betrayal is not about mistrust. It's about refusing to outsource perception to emotion. When attachment no longer clouds judgment, reality becomes visible again. And when reality is visible, betrayal loses its power to surprise or destroy. Most men think betrayal happens because they were not good enough, not attentive enough, or not masculine enough. That belief is comforting because it implies control. If you improve enough, betrayal won't happen again. But this belief is also dangerous because it misidentifies the real cause and keeps men trapped in self-blame instead of strategic awareness. Betrayal is rarely about deficiency. It is about opportunity, emotion, and shifting self-interest. People don't betray because someone else failed. They betray because their internal state changed and an alternative felt more exciting, validating, or convenient in that moment. When men don't understand this, they personalize behavior that was never personal to begin with. Modern men are raised to believe loyalty is a moral constant. If someone commits, they stay committed. But attraction and desire are emotional forces, not moral contracts. They fluctuate with environment, options, stress, and internal fulfillment. When desire weakens and a new stimulus appears, many people follow feeling before principle. This is not cruelty. It is human nature operating without discipline. Men who don't expect betrayal assume that love freezes behavior in place. They believe past affection guarantees future loyalty. This is why they are shocked when behavior changes. They are living in memory while the other person is living in the present. Betrayal doesn't begin with cheating. It begins with emotional disengagement that goes unnoticed or unchallenged. Another mistake men make is believing reassurance equals security. Words are taken as proof. I'd never do that to you. Becomes a shield against reality. But reassurance is cheap when emotions are shifting. Behavior always tells the truth faster than language. When actions and words don't align, words are usually there to buy time. Expecting betrayal forces a man to observe incentives instead of intentions. He stops asking, does she care about me? And starts asking, is my presence still adding value to her emotional experience? That question is uncomfortable, but it is honest. Desire is maintained through polarity, respect, and emotional impact, not through consistency alone. This awareness changes how a man behaves. He no longer over-invests prematurely. He doesn't put his entire identity into the relationship. He maintains his purpose, his routines, his social world, not as manipulation, but as stability. A man with options and direction is not easily destabilized by another person's emotional swings. Betrayal often happens when one person becomes the emotional center of the other's life. The dynamic flips from mutual desire to dependency. Dependency creates pressure. Pressure erodes attraction. When attraction fades, loyalty becomes fragile. Men who expect betrayal avoid this trap by never abandoning their center. Another key truth modern men miss is that loyalty is maintained, not earned once. Past effort doesn't protect future outcomes. Every relationship is a living system. When growth stops, stagnation begins. Expecting betrayal keeps a man from becoming complacent. He continues to evolve not to please, but to stay aligned with his own standards. This mindset also prevents emotional collapse. When a man believes betrayal is impossible, its discovery shatters his identity. He questions his worth, his judgment, and his future. When a man understands betrayal as a risk, not a reflection, he processes it with clarity. Pain may exist, but confusion does not. Expecting betrayal does not mean living in fear. It means living in truth. It means understanding that emotions change. People choose themselves under pressure, and loyalty requires conditions. A man who accepts this does not harden. He sharpens. When you stop seeing betrayal as a personal failure and start seeing it as a predictable human pattern, you stop being blindsided and start being prepared. One of the most dangerous myths modern men believe is that emotional safety exists in relationships. They think once trust is built, once promises are exchanged, once time has passed, the risk disappears. But emotional safety is not something you arrive at and then relax into. It is an illusion that forms when comfort replaces awareness. Relationships are not static contracts. They are dynamic emotional environments. Feelings shift. Priorities evolve. External influences appear. When a man believes emotional safety is guaranteed, he stops paying attention. He stops reading behavior. He stops noticing subtle changes in tone, effort, and responsiveness. And betrayal thrives in blind spots. Betrayal rarely happens suddenly. It is almost always preceded by gradual emotional drift, less curiosity, less respect, less enthusiasm, more secrecy, more irritation, more comparison. But men who believe they are safe ignore these signals because acknowledging them would threaten the comfort they've built their identity around. This is where advanced awareness separates strong men from broken ones. A man who understands that emotional safety is never permanent does not panic, he observes. He understands that trust is not about closing your eyes, it's about keeping them open without becoming paranoid. Awareness is calm, not anxious. Most men collapse emotionally after betrayal because they attach their sense of security to someone else's consistency. They outsource their emotional regulation. When that consistency breaks, they fall apart. But men who never hand over that responsibility remain grounded. They don't need to demonize the other person or rewrite history. They simply adjust to reality. Another critical mistake is assuming love overrides self-interest. It doesn't. Under stress, temptation, or opportunity, many people prioritize emotional relief over moral ideals. This isn't unique to women or men, it's human behavior. Expecting otherwise is non-V. Understanding this allows a man to build relationships without illusions. When you accept that betrayal is always a possibility, you stop structuring your life around preventing it. You stop controlling. You stop overchecking. You stop needing reassurance. Instead, you build a life where betrayal does not destroy you. Your value doesn't collapse because it was never dependent on loyalty alone. This mindset also changes how you invest. You invest gradually. You test consistency over time. You value behavior over words. You don't rush emotional exclusivity before alignment is proven. You allow attraction and respect to develop naturally instead of forcing security through labels and promises. Men who fear betrayal cling harder. Men who expect it calmly become more selective. They walk away sooner from disrespect. They don't argue with reality. If energy shifts, they notice. If effort fades, they adjust. They don't negotiate desire. They don't beg for consistency. True power in dating and relationships comes from emotional self-sufficiency, not coldness, not detachment, But independence. When you enjoy someone without needing them, you become resilient. You can love deeply without being fragile. You can commit without being blind. This is why expecting betrayal paradoxically leads to healthier relationships. You show up more grounded. You communicate more clearly. You maintain your purpose. You remain attractive because you are not desperate for emotional certainty. And when loyalty is present, it feels chosen, not enforced. If betrayal happens, it becomes information, not devastation. It tells you alignment no longer exists. It tells you values diverged, and you move forward without losing yourself. The man who understands this never fears betrayal because he never builds his life on emotional illusions. One of the most common reasons men experience deep betrayal is not because they trust it, but because they invested too much too early without confirmation. Overinvestment is not love, it is projection. It is when a man fills in the gaps of reality with hope, fantasy, and future scenarios that haven't been earned yet. And when reality eventually shows up, it feels like betrayal even if the warning signs were always there. Modern men are conditioned to emotionally commit fast. They are taught that intensity equals sincerity, that giving more will inspire loyalty, that proving devotion will secure the relationship. But attraction and respect don't work that way. Emotional investment must follow evidence, not desire. When you overinvest early, you hand over leverage. You communicate without words that you need the outcome more than the process. This creates imbalance. The other person may not consciously intend harm, but the dynamic shifts. One person becomes anchored, the other exploratory, and where imbalance exists, resentment or temptation eventually follows. Advanced men understand pacing. They allow interest to grow naturally. They don't rush exclusivity. Emotional disclosure or long-term planning before consistency is demonstrated. They don't mistake chemistry for character. They observe how someone handles boundaries, stress, disagreement, and temptation before deciding how much emotional weight to place on the connection. Overinvestment also blinds perception. When you emotionally lock in too soon, you stop seeing clearly. You rationalize red flags, you excuse disrespect, you ignore changes in energy because walking away would mean losing something you already decided mattered deeply. This is not loyalty, it is self-betrayal. Expecting betrayal at a strategic level doesn't mean assuming bad intent. It means assuming human inconsistency. People can feel genuine desire today and feel uncertainty tomorrow. Circumstances change, options appear, emotions fluctuate. When you accept this, you stop building castles on unstable ground. Men who avoid overinvestment don't become cold, they become selective. They don't withhold affection out of fear, they regulate it out of wisdom. They give attention, presence, and care, but they don't attach their identity, future, or self-worth to another person's behavior. This also changes how betrayal feels if it happens. Instead of devastation, there is clarity. You don't feel like your world collapsed because your world was never centered on one person. You grieve the loss of connection, not the loss of yourself. That distinction is everything. Another key element is maintaining parallel fulfillment. Purpose, fitness, friendships, growth, these are not distractions from relationships, they are stabilizers. When your emotional needs are diversified, no single relationship carries the pressure of being your everything. That pressure alone destroys attraction and accelerates betrayal. Overinvestment also leads men to tolerate things they shouldn't. Disrespect, inconsistency, emotional unavailability. They stay because they already put so much in. But strong men don't protect sunk costs. They protect standards. They understand that walking away early is strength, not failure. When you pace investment properly, loyalty becomes visible over time. It's shown through consistency, effort, and integrity under pressure. And when someone earns deeper commitment, it feels solid, not desperate, not forced. Ironically, the man who can walk away easily is the man least likely to be betrayed. Not because betrayal is impossible, but because he doesn't create conditions that invite it. He doesn't cling. He doesn't chase certainty. He allows desire to breathe. And if betrayal still occurs, it doesn't destroy him. It simply redirects him. The final and most advanced principle is understanding that expecting betrayal is not about distrust of women. It is about deep trust in yourself. Men who truly master relationships are not trying to control outcomes or prevent pain at all costs. They build a life mindset and identity that remains intact no matter what another person chooses to do. This is where emotional sovereignty begins. Most men fear betrayal because they fear loss of love, loss of validation, loss of meaning. But that fear only exists when your value is externally anchored, when your sense of worth depends on someone staying, choosing you, or remaining loyal forever. You are already vulnerable, not to betrayal, but to dependency. And dependency is what destroys masculine strength. Expecting betrayal at a mature level means accepting impermanence. People change. Desires shift. Circumstances evolve. This does not make women cruel or men foolish. It makes humans human. The man who understands this does not cling to permanence. He builds stability inside himself. He doesn't ask, how do I make her never leave? He asks, who do I become so that leaving me is her loss, not my collapse? This mindset changes how you show up in relationships. You stop negotiating your boundaries for comfort. You stop tolerating disrespect to avoid conflict. You stop shrinking yourself to maintain peace. Because deep down, you know that even if the relationship ends, you remain whole. That knowledge alone creates a calm authority that cannot be faked. Men who fear betrayal often over-explain, overgive, and overstay. Men who accept it as a possibility move with quiet confidence. They say less. They observe more. They let actions speak. And when behavior no longer aligns with respect, they don't argue reality, they respond to it. Another critical shift happens here. You stop personalizing other people's choices. If someone betrays you, it no longer becomes a story about your inadequacy. It becomes information about their capacity, values, and readiness. This emotional detachment is not coldness. It is clarity. You feel disappointment, not devastation. Pain, not identity collapse. This is why strong men recover quickly. Not because they didn't care, but because they didn't abandon themselves. Their routines remain. Their mission continues. Their standards stay intact. They grieve without spiraling, reflect without blaming, and move forward without bitterness. When a woman senses that a man's life does not hinge on her approval, something interesting happens. Either she rises into deeper respect and desire, or she exits early. Both outcomes are wins, because the worst place to be is with someone who stays only because you made it hard for them to leave. Expecting betrayal also removes illusion. You don't pedestalize, you don't romanticize potential, you don't confuse intensity with depth. You enjoy moments fully, but you don't build your future on emotional highs alone. You let time reveal truth, and if betrayal never happens, then you don't leave guarded, you live grounded. You still love, you still give, but you do so from abundance, not fear. You offer commitment as a choice, not a plea. This is the paradox. The man least afraid of betrayal is the man most capable of healthy intimacy. Because he doesn't demand loyalty, he inspires it through strength, direction, and self-respect. When you expect nothing, you are not disappointed. When you expect awareness, you are never blind. And when you expect yourself to be okay, no matter the outcome, you are finally free.